Hi there, my name is Troy Parfit, and I'm the author of The Devil in His Due, How Jordan Peterson Plagiarizes Adolf Hitler. In today's episode, Why is it so difficult to believe Jordan Peterson is a neo-Nazi? I'm going to list and explore possible reasons why many people seem to believe the chance of Jordan Peterson being an adherent of Adolf Hitler is zero. And I'm going to show you quotes from neo-Nazis, or white supremacists, to help you understand how they signal to their listeners. Of course, one reason why people just can't believe Jordan Peterson could be a Nazi is bias. Many people really like Peterson. He has millions of followers. Several of his fans have told me he brought them back from the brink. They typically won't hear a negative word against him, let alone accusations that he's plagiarizing Hitler. Another possible reason is a popular online meme that people like to use when, for example, someone implies or declares that someone else is a fascist or neo-Nazi. The meme takes the form of the cover of a children's book entitled Everyone I Don't Like is Hitler, a child's guide to online political discussion. Of all the dreck on the internet, this image might just be the dreckiest. Its message is curious. Since you think everyone is a fascist, no one is a fascist. Fascists, or neo-Nazis, don't exist, and possibly they never have. They've been expunged from modern-day society and history by a cheap meme. Of course, if I say so-and-so is a closet Nazi, I could be wrong, but I also could have evidence that indicates I might be right. Each case would be unique and would require debate. Enter from stage right, the meme designed to stifle that debate. That this meme would be popular at a time when fascism and white nationalism are clearly on the rise is interesting. As I record this, a major news story in my own country, Canada, is about the presence of white supremacists in the Canadian military. And we've seen what's happening in the United States with Donald Trump and his so-called populism. In 2017, a poll done by ABC News and The Washington Post found that 9% of Americans believed that holding neo-Nazi or white supremacist views was acceptable. The study also discovered that another 10% were supporters of the alt-right. That's 19% of the population, or around 62 million Americans. But there's nothing to worry about. We know that in Germany, from polls and other sources, for instance Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer from the Frankfurt School, that many West Germans retained Nazi beliefs well after 1945. This year, in 2020, during Germany's VE Day ceremony, yes, Germany commemorates Victory in Europe Day, President Frank-Walter Steinmeier warned about a resurgence of fascism. He may have had in mind the far-right AfD, or Alternative für Deutschland, which in 2017 won 94 seats in the Bundestag, making it Germany's third largest party. I could give further examples of the distressing resurgence of ethno-nationalism or identitarianism, but clearly I'm overreacting because, as Jordan Peterson's fans have told me, everyone I don't like is Hitler. A third reason people refuse to believe that JP could be taking his guidance from AH could be Godwin's law, also known as Godwin's rule of Nazi analogies. The law states, rather inelegantly, I think you'll agree, quote, as a discussion on the internet grows longer, the likelihood of a comparison of a person's being compared to Hitler or another Nazi reference increases. That's quite profound, no? Again, the implication is that comparing anyone to a Nazi is absurd, presumably even Nazis. Like the meme, Godwin's so-called law is a third-rate idea, and it raises a number of questions. 1. Why would the discussion have to be online? 2. As conversations unfold, wouldn't the chances of the emergence of any topic increase? 3. What would Godwin's law be called if it were a logical fallacy? The topic fallacy? I can just imagine the description. The topic fallacy occurs when one speaker raises a certain topic at some point during a conversation. Online. Ways to avoid committing this fallacy include not discussing topics or taking a nap. It isn't just internet types or Jordan Peterson fans who like to cite Godwin's law. It's been promoted by Steven Pinker, who has implied the alt-right doesn't exist. The neo-Nazi I mentioned in the previous episode, Ernst Zundel, who Peterson defended, even though Zundel was jailed in Canada and Germany, a fact Peterson failed to mention, had a protege named Bela Ewald Altens. In the 1990s, Altens was the main peanut in the packet in Germany's neo-Nazi underground, and Zundel supplied him with funding and propaganda material. Here are 2 quotes from Mr. Altens. 1. It's easy to imagine myself taking someone who just got off a transport train at a concentration camp and have them carry a sack of wet salt from one side of the compound to the other. People don't like to picture themselves doing that because it's too frightening, but I know perfectly well that I could do that, and maybe I could even enjoy it. 2. If I had lived there, in Nazi Germany, I would have done it. I would have been a Nazi. I would have Sieg Heiled. I would have entered the Nazi party. I would have joined it. Note how Altons's quotes are similar. I would have done it. I can imagine myself doing it. This approach is one of many used by neo-Nazis to signal to their listeners. It encourages prospective followers or like-minded associates to fantasize about what they might have done back in the short-lived thousand-year Reich. Another neo-Nazi technique is downplaying the evils of the Nazi regime. Hitler wasn't that bad, or wasn't always bad. For example, Ernst Zundel once said, "I'm not saying that Hitler was a choir boy." He also said, "It's not to say that a man in that position was without faults, because Hitler certainly had as many faults as the next person did." Zundel further remarked, "I'm not saying that during the Second World War, Germany did not, under the leadership of the National Socialist government, commit crimes." So here we see the minimizing of Hitler's malevolence. This strategy can work as a signal, a recruiting technique, and an instructional to other neo-Nazis, so they will know how to signal and persuade. The final neo-Nazi signaling strategy I wish to discuss is talking about IQ and race. For example, neo-Nazis talk about IQ and race in connection with Caucasians, East Asians, Africans, and Jews. There are a number of related objectives, but one is to sound scientific while noting biological differences between groups. You don't need to say anything blatantly racist. You just need to raise the subject and emphasize difference. The topics of biology and biological difference were, of course, emphasized by the Nazis as a strategy for drawing attention to the other, or the Untermenschen, which would need to be eliminated to preserve the biological purity of the master race. Hitler often spoke about biology and evolution as a rhetorical stratagem to sow division and engender racial hatred. These days, the champion of this technique is Stéphane Molyneux. If you're unfamiliar with Molyneux, he's described by Wikipedia as a Canadian far-right white nationalist and white supremacist, best known for his promotion of scientific racism, eugenics, etc. Molyneux is a cult leader whose followers are mostly white men. Molyneux has said, Ashkenazi Jews don't have a significantly strong advantage in spatial reasoning, which is one of the reasons you'll hear a lot about Jewish writers, but not Jewish engineers. He has also spoken about Jews and their supposed radical overrepresentation in positions of authority and influence. In the first quote, he points to the Jews being biologically different, and in the second, he floats a conspiracy theory employed by the Nazis, that there were Jewish wire pullers everywhere, and their alleged domination in various fields was unwarranted or barring the way of good Aryans. To recap, we've covered reasons why people may think that Jordan Peterson could not be a Nazi, for example, a popular meme and a so-called law that suggest no one could be a Nazi, along with quotes from neo-Nazis and a white supremacist in order to better understand their rhetoric. Finally, we heard quotes from Dr. Jordan B. Peterson that were similar to the ones from Nazis or the white supremacist. Did you spot them? To return to those quotes, the neo-Nazi Bela Altens said, "If I had lived there, in Nazi Germany, I would have done it. I would have been a Nazi. I would have Sieg Heiled. I would have entered the Nazi party. I would have joined it." However, it was Jordan Peterson who said, "It's easy to imagine myself taking someone who just got off a transport train at a concentration camp and have them carry a sack of wet salt from one side of the compound to the other. People don't like to picture themselves doing that because it's too frightening, but I know perfectly well that I could do that, and maybe I could even enjoy it. Sorry, I played a little trick on you, but now I'm coming clean." As for the quotes from Ernst Zundel, he really did say, "I'm not saying that Hitler was a choir boy," and "I'm not saying that during the Second World War, Germany did not, under the leadership of the National Socialist government, commit crimes." However, it was Jordan Peterson who said, "It's not to say that a man in that position was without faults, because Hitler certainly had as many faults as the next person did." Concerning the comments from Stéphane Molyneux, he really did say, Ashkenazi Jews don't have a significantly strong advantage in spatial reasoning, which is one of the reasons you'll hear a lot about Jewish writers, but not Jewish engineers. However, it was Jordan Peterson who spoke of Jewish radical overrepresentation of positions of authority and influence. In other words, it was Jordan Peterson who regurgitated a Nazi conspiracy theory, which he did when he spoke to Stéphane Molyneux. Stéphane Molyneux made his statement about Jews and spatial reasoning when he spoke to Jordan Peterson. They spoke to each other, and they published their talk. If Jordan Peterson is really warning against neo-Nazism, why would he make statements which are akin to those of neo-Nazis? Why would he defend Ernst Zundel and criticize the Canadian government for supposedly oppressing Zundel? Why would he do an interview with Stéphane Molyneux? Also, I mentioned members of the Frankfurt School, Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer, who noted that Germans retained Hitlerite beliefs years after the war. Peterson has criticized and taken shots at Adorno and Horkheimer, who who are both Jewish. To the naysayers, a question: do you still think the chance of Jordan Peterson being a closet Nazi is 0? Thanks for listening, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.